There's no clerk. We will not call this meeting to order yet until there's someone to track the order. There she is. Now we can begin. Now we'll call this meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Fitzgerald.
Here.
Councilmember Alvarez.
Here.
Councilmember Clark.
Here.
Councilmember Stokes.
Here.
Councilmember Todd.
Here.
Councilmember Saper.
Here.
Councilmember Schneider.
Here.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
All right, as soon as I rearrange. There we go. Next item, Pledge of Allegiance this evening will be led by Councilmember Fitzgerald. All right, next item is approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Move to approve.
Second?
All in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Next item, comments from the public. Anyone from the public wishing to speak this evening, please step up. Good evening.
Good evening. George Schluter, 800 East 23rd Avenue. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to take a very close, serious look at your Resolution 21-046 regarding call sign. This will allow them to have cooking facilities inside a building that's not sprinklered, that's against the code. It provides no provisions for protection of that area other than to allow them to build this within it, and I think it should not be done. Also, I don't think that you all should act as a code review board. I brought this up to your attention before. Your existing ordinances that you adopted says that the code review board will be technical people who understand the construction, and they will not be reimbursed by the city. And I don't think that you as a council fit either one of those requirements. Thank you.
Thank you. Further public comments? Good evening.
Good evening, Council. Adam Roberts, East 24th Avenue. I'm here to talk about the employee liquor cards. I own a business here in town, as many of you know, and we have employee liquor cards. I actually brought this to Councilmember Smith's attention maybe 2 months ago when I found out we still didn't remove ours. So earlier this year, Kansas City, Missouri Council unanimously voted to remove and completely get rid of all their employee liquor cards. This is a pretty antiquated thing. Having had a business in both cities, Kansas City, Missouri did do background checks. It did take a lengthy process to actually get your liquor cards. Here it is I would say, less than 5-minute process. I believe they're just searching for warrants. They're not actually doing full background checks. So this is essentially penalizing people who want to work in the service industry and deal with liquor or alcohol to pay a fee that nobody else has to do in Kansas City or North Kansas City to do business or work here. As we all know, staffing is difficult these days, and this only makes it more difficult for business owners like myself when trying to find new staff. We have to have something that all of our surrounding communities do not have, which is this liquor card. And it may seem negligible to some people, the $25, I believe, is what it is currently, but it is a barrier to entry when we're talking service-level jobs. I reached out to regulated industries today just to see kind of where their perspective was. And Mr. Matt Brantner, who used to work with the city and does work with the state and deals with liquor control. And he said the state of Missouri removed this earlier this year and does not consider felons ineligible to work with alcohol and liquor. So that is why they got rid of it. So we are just holding on to this, probably because nobody knew it was still there. But I would like your support in getting rid of this antiquated process so that we can be similar to Kansas City, Missouri, and open our doors to all potential employees. I've spoke with many other local business owners who have these have liquor licenses and have employees that serve liquor, and they are all ready to see this go by the wayside. Thank you.
Thank you for coming this evening. Next, did you want to talk on an item that's more specifically related to you, or do you just want to go ahead and knock out of public comments?
I can make comments now. I didn't know if I could make comments or we have a discussion on it when it comes up. If I can,
Well, how's it listed here, 16 Clay termination? I mean, I'd let you come up during that item, since that's very specific and tailored just to you, unless you have plans and you don't want to listen to the rest of this. If you're trying to get out of here. Okay, there you go. Sorry. Further public comments? No. All right.
Quick
She gets an actual head shake.
question.
Yeah, go ahead.
After Mr. Schluter's comment, I know we've approved the agenda. Could we talk about number 18?
Yeah, we could still,
Amend
when
the
it comes
agenda?
time to approve the consent agenda, I believe we can still pull off
Okay.
at that point as well.
Sounds
Is- At least that's what we've done, so I'll continue that practice as well. With that, no more public comments. Number 6, selection committee for public transportation services, RFP. This was my item. Say it's not traditionally something we do, but it's not unprecedented either. In the past, I sat on the bike master plan selection committee, and due to the open nature of this RFP request, I thought it makes sense that if council also reviewed the RFPs and potentially did some of the finalist interviews as well. So that's why that item is on here. And then I'd ask for any council feedback on that. Oh, I got a thumbs up. Well, then eventually I got to ask numbers and who you'd want that to be and everything else if we're past the okay portion on that. They all say okay. Councilmember Smith, looked like you had a hand.
Yeah,
And Councilmember Saper had a hand as well. Go ahead.
Since I've kind of made this one of my holy war things with KCATA, I'd be interested in sitting on the committee that takes a look at the RFP stuff.
All right. Thank you, Councilmember Saper.
I too would like to be on that committee as perhaps the only council member that actually has transportation planning background, as well as background in transportation, having been a railroad engineer and a bus driver for the KCATA. I would like to be on that as well.
Perfect. Guess we'll open it up for further interest at this point then. There we go. Then I have myself as well.
I don't know how many
There you go.
people we'll have to discuss on numbers, but I would also be interested in.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to go for a majority of us, but yeah.
2 or 3, I'm not sure.
It's
Are you
4.
aiming specifically for council members, or
Yeah.
do you want like from, okay.
Yep. Is that a good? Get those 3, see if we can get scheduled up. If not, maybe we change out, but if that works, that works. Got Saper. Someone over here say yes? No. We're tentative that. There we go. Then we'll go boom, boom, boom. How about that? We good with this? There you go. Item number 6 is,
Mayor
Please.
DeLong, just so we know, who are the, who were
Saper,
selected?
Toll, Smith.
All, okay, just the 3?
Oh, I'm Mayor Pro Tem Snyder.
It's okay.
I'm sorry.
It's
It's
okay.
even on my paper right tonight. Then I did it wrong. I'm doing better when it's not right on here. See. Okay. Farther. There we go.
And then Connor's the alternate, in case the meetings are held at a time that
Yeah.
somebody can't go.
There you go. Item 7. Calendar year 2024 rate, water and sewer rates.
Good evening, everybody. I was here 3 months ago in July, and we presented kind of a preliminary plan, and the plan you'll see tonight is very similar to that preliminary plan we presented in July with one change that was kind of discussed in that meeting, and we'll give you as an option here tonight. So just to give you an overview, in these first few slides, it'll look exactly like July because nothing has changed. Overall, the financial plan for the water utility is that the water utility needs a 15% overall increase in revenue this year is what the financial plan is recommending. And then in future years, we expect that to come down, although it's important to note that the master plans for both water and sewer are being finalized, and those will work into this. But even with the master plan, we don't expect to be up here at this 15% level any longer in the future. So we'll work with city staff next year when it comes around to develop the plan that incorporates the master plan at that time. On the sewer side, we're looking at a 7% increase. And again, a lot of this is driven by Kansas City's rates increase every year. We have less control over our sewer rates than our water rates even. So it's important to recognize that a lot of the cost in the sewer utility is a pass-through from Kansas City. And again, on this side, as I already mentioned, on the water side, the city is finalizing the master plans, and we expect those to be incorporated next year. So overall, when we take a look at the 15% sewer water rate increase, 7% sewer rate increase, for a typical household that we've always defined in our studies as a customer using 4,000 gallons a month, that would be a 9.2% overall bill increase, a $7.35 total bill increase. And I'll have a bill comparison here at the end, just to give you an idea. But that's relatively low compared to other utilities in the region, although certainly we don't want to minimize the impact of a $7 a month increase. But it's important to keep it in perspective of, how does that look compared to other communities providing these services. The one thing that we talked about in July was, and we've talked about this before July as well with this group, is the minimum. North Kansas City's water rate has a 3,500 gallon minimum. So regardless of how much you use, if you use anything below 3,500 gallons, you're going to pay the same base charge because the base charge includes a 3,500 gallon basically allowance. But it is reflected within that base charge of currently $21.34 and projected to go to $24.54 with the 15% increase. And we had talked before that that's becoming less common in the industry to have that minimum because it doesn't basically, in effect, you're saying, well, we don't care how much water you use. If you're only using 1,000 gallons, you might as well use another 2,000 gallons because you're paying for it anyway. And it doesn't promote conservation. It doesn't promote responsible use of that resource. So it's something that a lot of utilities have moved away from. So the discussion we had in July was, can we take a look at that? We talked about waiting till next year because the rate increases will be lower, but we went ahead and took a look at an option for this year. So the option in working with city staff that we've developed is to lower that minimum this year to 2,000, and then next year we can look at lowering it to 1,000 or even 0. Would kind of be probably the next two steps we want to look at. And so overall, what we did in this analysis is we took the usage, basically the volume rate that we charge for that usage below 10,000 gallons, and backed that out of the minimum. And so it's not a huge change, quite frankly, in that. It's basically $2.90 approximately that comes out of that minimum charge. But then we still increase it by the 15% revenue increase we already talked about. So overall, for a 5/8 inch meter customer, the customer who uses 2,000 gallons or less, their bill increase will only be from $21.34 to $21.66. So they will only see a 32-cent increase in their bill for this coming year, in their water bill. Of course, their sewer bill is still on that same bill. We're not talking about sewer at all. This is only a change to the water rates. So this recognizes that decrease in the minimum. Basically, everybody who uses less than 3,500 gallons will then see a less than 15% rate increase. Everybody else will still see the same 15% increase that we're proposing. Working with city staff, sometimes when we do analyses like this, what we do is we say, well, we're going to make it revenue neutral. If we decrease this, we have to make it up somewhere. But just based on the financial plan, we're actually not, this option does not do that. Basically, this decreases revenue for the water utility by a little over 1%. But the utility has the ability to absorb that. We'll have to kind of recognize that next year. But again, with all the changes next year, we'll work that in and do that. But we felt this was the simplest option to give you to reduce that minimum and to actually have an impact on those customers. So we can say that all those customers using less than 3,500 gallons, they will see a lower bill than they otherwise would have by reducing this minimum. And so this accomplishes that. And it really recognizes and so all those customers that we talked about in that July meeting, they will see an impact on their bill from this change.
Councilmember, I'm going to stop you real quick here.
Sure.
Councilmember Smith's got a question.
So I'm struggling a little bit to understand. So we're dropping from 3,500 to 2,000. What, for example, if somebody uses 3,400 gallons?
They will see probably off the top of my head, it'll be like a 14.5% increase in their bill.
So
It'll be,
it would be the base plus some usage.
yeah,
amount.
basically, there will be 100 gallons that was built into their minimum before that they're not using and they're no longer paying for.
Okay, so it'd be,
It would be like 19 cents.
I gotcha. And so okay, I'm looking at the chart here. What is for the base charge, what all's rolled into that? Is that other things than usage, I
So the
assume?
base charge, there's three basic components to the base charge. There's meter reading, billing, and collection, the cost for us to go out there, read a meter, send a customer a bill, collect the money. And that's roughly the same for all customers regardless of meter size. The next component is meters and services, which is the cost of actually maintaining the meter that's in the ground. And that varies by meter size. Bigger meters cost a lot more money than a 5/8 inch meter that your typical residential customer has. And then there's readiness to serve. And the readiness to serve is basically a component that many utilities include in their rate that basically says, regardless of whether or not you use our utility, we have built the assets, we've got the water plant, we have the distribution system, you should pay something because it adds value to your property to be connected to our water utility, even if you don't use anything in a month. And you should share in those costs. And so that's what readiness to serve recognizes. And we're somewhat accomplishing that through the minimum. The minimum does accomplish that to some extent. But when we look at our base charge, it is a little on the high side, and with the 15% increase, just without giving you exact comparison, it's a little on the high side. It's not outrageous, but it's not what I would say is middle of the road. It's definitely not low. And so when we look at the impact of backing out this usage going from 2134 to 2166, it really does it basically keeps us where we're at roughly. We're not moving further onto the high side. And so, but your base charge does include all three of those components now.
Okay.
And really part of what I'm saying is the general industry standard has been to move away from having a minimum charge and just having a readiness to serve. Saying you don't get any usage, but regardless if you use zero, you still need to help pay. And also, of course, the readiness to serve also recognizes fire protection because an important aspect of our water distribution system is that it's there to provide public fire protection for all properties.
Okay, appreciate that. So I thought when we talked about removing minimums, that we'd see a bigger decrease than negative 32 cents. I didn't realize how much of that was made up by the base charge. So the discussion, I think we should go to zero on the base charge just on principle, but it wouldn't make that big a difference. If we went to zero, what would the
You mean
base
a
charge?
zero?
No, zero on the minimum. So instead of 2,000 gallons, just go straight to 0
And
gallons.
again, because, just thinking of this conceptually, when you look at what our rates are $1.92 per thousand.
Right.
Even after the 15% increase.
It's almost nothing. And,
Right.
And that's why I was surprised to see it barely move the needle when we dropped from 3,500 to 2,000. And you said our base charge itself is on the high end.
It's a little on the high side is what I would say. It's not, I've seen $40, $50 base charge.
What is the base charge in dollars? It's like
Right now, it's
19.
$21.34, and with the 15% increase, if we raised them all by 15, it would go to $24.54.
So the 2134 is,
$21.34. Yeah.
is that the base plus 3,500 gallons, or is that the
That
base?
includes 3,500 gallons, because the
Okay.
base charge includes 3,500 gallons.
What
If
is
you
it without the usage, without the 3,500?
You mean if we backed out
If we went to
these-
zero on minimum
Well,
usage?
again, it would basically be the current rate is $1.68 times 3.5,
Yep,
which would be $6. So it would be about
$15.
$15, a little over $15.
Okay, and then we haven't talked about sewer yet, and that's really not on the table, but what is the rate per 1,000 gallons on sewer?
It's here. It is about $8, $8.50.
And that's not something we really have much control over.
It's not
a
because so much of our
pass-through.
expense is a pass-through from Kansas City.
Okay.
A vast majority, I want to say it's 60, 70% of our expense is just what we pay Kansas City.
And are we billing, is it a 3,500 gallon minimum on sewer as well?
No, there
It's
is no
just straight
minimum,
usage.
it's straight
Okay.
usage on sewer, correct. That is also a difference between the two utilities.
Okay. Yeah, I had in my head that we were going to move the needle a lot more than we did by dropping, or even considering dropping the minimum.
I can understand that. I mean, but it's still something, you know. I mean, it's still only a 1.5% rate increase for those customers instead of a 15 on their water bill. But considering where the water utility is, you know, we would have liked something more dramatic too to bring to you, but this, like I said, in the end, we couldn't even make this revenue neutral. We had to go ahead and accept, you know, even losing just a little bit of revenue to even accomplish this much, to make it something that we felt was at least a little bit impactful.
Okay. Appreciate it.
Oh, there we go, Councilmember Saper. I
Yes.
forgot I was going to let him finish the slides first there. No.
Okay, now, before you finish the slides, we talk about residential customers. How many do we have?
We have approximately residential accounts, these 5/8 inch
Yeah,
meters, are
yeah.
approximately 1,200.
1,200. So it's, and total customers roughly?
About 2,500.
Okay, so it's by far a much smaller number, the residential.
It's, to disagree with Nick a little, according to my data, it's 1,700 residential customers, which I think is more. 1,200 sounded a little low, honestly.
It's still less, so those
Yeah.
are the ones we're talking about here, really.
Well, I would say that's who we're primarily concerned about. However, this will impact
I am too.
the little insurance office, the little, you know, whatever other little retail stores that have one bathroom, they will see a benefit from this too.
Yeah,
Basically, anybody with a, you know, 3/4 inch meter, you know, who doesn't use a lot of water will see a benefit from this, which may include a lot of little retail stores or offices or things like that where they only have one bathroom, where it's only 1 or 2 or 3 people.
I'm certainly in favor of restructuring it to the extent that we can within the confines of being fiscally responsible.
Right.
Thank you.
And that's, you know, you guys, you know, quite frankly, my recommendation to you was to wait till next year when we had a smaller rate increase to be able to kind of work it in a little better. But, you know, we heard you loud and clear in July that you wanted to take a look at this. And like I said, this is, I think, you know, given what we need to do with the 15% overall increase, I think, you know, this is a good option that at least delivers something.
On you go. What else we
Okay.
got?
My final slide is just the rate comparison. You know, as I talked about, switch this on my computer so I can see what I'm talking about here. You know, right now, North Kansas City, when you look at a typical 4,000 gallon per month bill, we're on the low end of, you know, similar communities in the region, and this will move us a little, the 15% increase for this bill will move us. And then, of course, for people using less than the minimum, they will actually see a little bit less, so they would be a little further to the left, potentially. I mean, you could see a lot of the utilities are pretty closely bunched there. There's not huge differences in the bills customers are seeing, you know, between Lawrence, Olathe, BPU, and ourselves. Kansas City is much higher, especially on the sewer side because of their combined sewer overflow challenges. And will still be a good bit below Gladstone and Liberty, other Clay County communities. So that's the end of my prepared presentation. I'd be happy to answer any other questions. Like I said, you know, I worked with city staff to come up with that option. You know, I think it's the best we can do. There's a lot of different ways we could approach that, and you know, we felt that was the best approach.
Yeah, so in one of our previous meetings, I can't remember, it might have been the last one, I had inquired about reducing the number of tiers we have on the water consumption, because we have 6. Was that evaluated on what that would look like if we could get down to?
We did not evaluate that. I mean, when you look at it, there's so few customers in those upper tiers, and our water usage is driven primarily by a single customer. We can do that and make it revenue neutral. It's not going to have much of an impact on.
I think
anybody.
'cause
and-
that was some of the inquiry. I mean,
Well,
understanding
in my-
that a few of the larger ones are, it's a limited number, but they're also getting,
Well,
talked
and
about like a
again,
10% discount approximately
is-
on other,
It's not a discount. It's my only word of caution.
okay. It's,
It reflects the fact that they use a lot of water year-round, as opposed to customers, because the worst type of customer for a water utility is somebody who uses a lot of water, but they only use it in the summer. Because we've built the plant, we've built the distribution system to supply it to them year-round, but they're only using it part of the year. A large industrial customer, like a food processing facility, that uses water year-round, they're paying for it every single day because they're using that water every single day. So it's really not a discount. It really does reflect their cost of service, that they pay a lower rate. And, I think my word of caution, and the reason we didn't bring anything forward on that is, if we want to do that, we need to wait for the lower increases so that we don't have big impacts on some customers. Again, if we had a 15% increase to eliminate to do something about the tiers, we would have to see people with even bigger than 15% rate increases then. Whereas if we're only going to raise the rates, hopefully, single digits next year, we can accomplish that without, people, getting shell shocked.
okay. maybe
Sticker shock.
I might be able to hold on to that one a year. Suspended solid and bio-auction demand surcharges. I know that you're focused on water at this point, but. did you
So
have anything
we're
with that as well?
working, so we're still working on that challenge. And, eventually we need to, and part of the challenge has been that there has been a lot of change at that large industrial customer because they were using a lot more for a short while, and then they've kind of addressed the challenges that were causing that. But we are still working on coming up with a solution that better addresses that in the long term. That more closely ties basically what we end up paying Kansas City to what we collect, because there is a disconnect. There's a potential disconnect, although we've never come out on the bad end of it, but we need to better reflect what we pay Kansas City for the surcharges to what we're charging the large industrial customer.
What we're collecting is in parity with what we're paying then.
Usually it is, but it's not of a direct of a linkage as it could be.
Got it. Okay. Further questions? Councilmember Smith.
So this chart is one that we've used a number of times. This is the first time I've noted that it includes the 4,000 gallons per month, which is, as you stated, considered an average or a typical.
It's a typical. I mean, we have a lot of customers, so it's the typical bill we've always showed you, quite frankly, when we've come here for several years now.
Yep. The reason I ask is because in the data it said 60% use less than 3,500, so mathematically 4,000 would not be
It's not.
typical.
It's like and it's not even a median bill. It's just like
It's just the one we picked.
It's the one we picked at the time because usually we have a lot of low usage customers here in North Kansas City,
Sure.
quite frankly. And so I don't even remember exactly why we picked the 4,000 when we picked that 7 years ago or so, but it's the one we've always used. And I was just about to say what you pointed out. So just to give you some context, and I believe it is on the slide, is 40% of the customers use 2,000 or less. So 40% of our customers will only see a 1.5% increase on that bill. And 40, I shouldn't say customers, excuse me. It's actually bills. It's actually bills. So you have some customers who will see that decrease in the winter, but not the summer, because they may use more. So just to be technically correct, it's 40% of our bills every year are below 2,000, and then 20% will fall into that 2,000 to 3,500 range. And they will see slightly less than a 15% increase on that bill for customers. So most likely, it's more than 60% of our customers will benefit from this at least 1 month out of the year.
Okay. Going forward, I think it would be helpful to see maybe a couple different charts at the 2,000 level and then maybe at the 3,500 level.
Sure.
And the reason I say that is now that it's come out that our base charge is a little higher, that makes a static number for us a little higher, and then the consumption would matter.
Sure.
And so I
Absolutely.
keep pointing to this chart to say, look at us, we're like middle of the pack at worst. But if
We can
people are
do that.
using less, they're getting hit with that base charge more. So I'd like to see where the trend
Sure.
line is at 2,000 and at 3,500.
We can definitely provide that.
Appreciate it.
Did you have the fund balances to present tonight as well? And then Councilmember Clark, I'll let you go ahead.
Yeah. Did you say Carla? I'll take it.
Clark.
That's fine. So you mentioned like surcharges from Kansas City. Are there like peak usage times? I mean, I speak in like
No,
utility language. Is there like peak usage of the summer where you might get charged more?
No, because that's sewer. That's sewer surcharges is what we're talking about.
Okay.
And sewer is more typically an average. There's not typically peak sewer charges. Sometimes there's recognition of, because peaks for sewer are driven by wet weather as opposed to actual customer demand. And we don't have peak charges from Kansas City, although of course that is the challenge they are dealing with, but their rate structure does not recognize peaks as far as what we deliver them.
I can't help but wonder then, is there any system in place that says like maybe our largest water users don't use as much water during a huge storm? I mean,
At the end of
really.
the day, it's the amount of stormwater overwhelms the domestic, what we call the domestic usage, the contributed flow, the contributed volume, as opposed to the I&I. The contributed volume doesn't make a big difference. I mean, if it was going to be really bad, we could ask them to cut. Of course, part of the problem is these weather events have become more unpredictable over time, it seems like. And so it's hard. And at the end of the day, do we want our biggest, industrial customer really altering the process? And unfortunately, right now, it doesn't impact us. It's Kansas City's problem. That's what we pay them for at the time, right now.
Okay. But that cost then transcends to us, right? Like that, or
But
is
there
it
is no
set for the
peak
year?
cost. There's no
Okay.
peak cost.
There's
really.
there's no like surcharge during
No.
emergency. Okay.
No,
That's all I
there's
wanted to
not.
know. Thanks.
Yeah.
Further questions?
I just have a comment. I just wanted to say, I'm happy that you brought this back with the 2,000. I know our goal is to get down to 0, but the 2,000 now, and that will make a difference. People probably won't know it made a difference, but when their bill doesn't go up, it really does make a difference.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to see that on here.
Thank you. Councilmember Saper.
At one point, we also discussed the possibility of exploring, at least, having our own water treatment facilities, wastewater. Have we gotten anywhere with that? as a
Anthony
consideration?
Sands is waving
answer
around
that.
there.
That's excuse me. That's actually a component of the wastewater master plan that will be reviewed and looked at in that plan. Not this is a separate system.
Thank you.
All right, did you have those? Do you have like the charts?
I'll send the formal fund balance. I'm just going off the top of my head right now. I believe it's around 11.8% was the fund balance for
Okay.
water, is what we would end at. It's still starting kind of the turn from going down to going up.
Yeah.
With the future rates continuing the trend of pushing the fund balance back up for the water utility. Same thing with the sewer. But I can send those numbers again. It is incorporated in the budget.
I can pull it up on there as well then. Okay. Perfect. So then the final recommendation still remains of 15% and 7% respectively there.
Right, with the option of whether or not you want to decrease the minimum.
Perfect. Oh, please.
I'll just say, next steps after this is we do have to provide a 30-day notice
Yeah.
for water and wastewater rates. So our goal would be to come back for the actual vote on the rates at the first meeting in December. Try to avoid the second meeting in December just because it's always kind of a hard meeting to get stuff ready for, but if we needed to, we could. So if there was a direction on if we wanted to incorporate the recommendation that Mr. Beckley provided, we would put that in the.
All right. Does council want to move ahead with the recommendation? Any opposed? None opposed. There we go. Thank you for the presentation. We're good? That's all we needed on that one, right? Yeah, okay. Where are we at here? 7, 8. 8, employee liquor cards. Say in general, Councilmember Smith had recently brought this up again. I know it's something we kicked around in the past. Not in the not too distant past, Kansas City had removed the requirement that employees of liquor establishments get liquor cards. And now the basic is, I would like council to consider the same as well here. And I'll let you start if you had anything else to add to that, Councilmember Smith.
Okay, so this one's complicated. I've talked to some local businesses who pretty much unanimously want this to go away, and understandably so. It's an extra barrier to hiring. It makes us a little less competitive with the neighboring city, Kansas City, that has abolished this. And I also sat down with Chief Freeman to talk about his perspective on it, which I would ask him to share here in a minute, as a check on who can be serving in our city. And so I see both sides of this. I'd like to hear thoughts from the council. I'd also like to hear from our liquor control officer, who I believe is here, on what the process could look like or would look like in the absence of these liquor cards. So open questions on the floor. Chief Freeman, can you speak to your perspective on this?
Sure, thank you. My perspective on this is the police department comes into this on the operational and enforcement side of this, not necessarily the administrative side of it, although the director of liquor control works, it's kind of a blurred line, works with the police department admin to facilitate the issuance of the liquor permits, right? So my perspective is, first and foremost, I don't think we should ever do anything just because Kansas City's doing it. We should stand alone. But there is a level of accountability and a level of responsibility that comes with serving and selling alcohol, and especially in North Kansas City. I think it's important that we keep the level of protections that we have in place right now in order to hold people accountable. When you take away that accountability, it's hard to get it back. There is a level of, somewhat of a level of protection for the business owner, for the process. The applicants do come in, and we do run a very brief records check on them to see if they have any local active warrants or wants. Generally, if they do, if it's serious enough, we obviously arrest them right then. If it's not so serious, say if it's a traffic ticket out of Kansas City or Gladstone or wherever, we probably tell them to go get that taken care of and come back when it's done. Most of the time they do. But there's also, again, a level of protection that is afforded to the business. Now, it's not completely on the city or the police department to do that. We do expect the business to fully vet who they hire to make sure that they're not putting a predator behind the bar. But that's not, we don't go that deep into the background check. We can. It would take more staff time to do that, but we don't. And then on the, I lost my train of thought on my next point.
So what else is included in a records check? So is that it? Is it basically, you just described all of it? There's no other steps. It's just checking.
Correct. That was my next point. Honestly, I think we should probably add a step to our process and not take anything away. And the step I think we should add is assure that the applicant takes some sort of online training in serving of alcohol, serving or selling of alcohol. It's free. It wouldn't cost them anything. It is a state program. They just go on the state website and they go through the 30, 40-minute training program, and it basically helps them understand what it means when they overserve, how to look for minors trying to purchase and consume, and stuff like that. We require anybody that is working with the city, as you guys have all approved recently, the city, the Parks Department to serve alcohol at some of their events. Anybody that gets a liquor license through the Parks Department is required to take that training because we're trying to protect the best interests of the city. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. The follow-up, what about, because I've never owned a business that got a liquor license, what is required of the business that, and this could be for you or Mr. Beamer, Beamer, what is required of the business when they have a liquor license? Is there a specific vetting of employees? Is there a requirement for them to enforce not over-serving? What do the businesses have to do? And is there any duplication between the liquor cards and what's required?
With regards to the ordinances, there is not necessarily the obligation of the business is to not allow anyone to be employed there that does not possess a North Kansas City employee card. Beyond that, in terms of Chief Freeman's reference to the online training, that is something that we've encouraged in the past for business owners to make sure that they had their employees go through that, but it has not been mandated as part of obtaining the employee card. The ordinance itself says that no one who has a conviction for a felony can be permitted to obtain a card here in the city. And I know in the past we have denied applicants on that basis. Beyond that, the ordinances require that if someone is convicted of a felony while they're employed and possessing that card, they're going to have to surrender that card. Now, there is no ongoing checks. Once you possess the card, there is no ongoing check to find out if you've been convicted of a felony in the 2 years that you possess that card.
Now, so in the event that these were removed, would the businesses have per their liquor license requirements, because I haven't read through what all those require, would they need to be background checking their employees per the liquor license requirement? Would they need to be monitoring for over-serving? Would they need to be doing all these things that are also required by the liquor card?
If the employee cards were abolished, currently there is no mandates in the ordinances for the online training or anything like that. It might be prudent that if you make the decision to abolish the cards, that you do mandate that the license holder is going to have to provide that type of training and potentially include that proof of training when they apply for their annual liquor license. Beyond,
go ahead.
I want to offer one other thing here. One of the things that I think we need to think about as well with the employee cards is it's not only what we're looking at on the front end, but it's what we can do to an individual who, once they possess the card, they're working in an establishment and they fail to follow the ordinances by serving to a minor, by failing to make a report to the police for some type of a disturbance that occurs at the establishment. Those are all things that are written into the code.
So but there'd be a large motivation, at least should be by the business owners, because ultimately it's their liquor license that's going to be on the line for that.
Yeah, that's what I'm driving.
So, I mean, many years, it's been a long time, but I think River Aces was our last huge issue that we've revoked a liquor license that I recall.
That is correct.
Did anyone get their liquor card revoked during that process? Or did just the liquor license for the establishment get revoked?
I will make this, because I was involved.
I know, that's a long time, and I know that, yes.
I remember it well.
Okay. When I first got my desk, there was a stack about that thick of reports from that establishment, yes.
The issue with River Aces was not necessarily the employees. It was the owner
itself. Yeah.
But if you have an establishment that has irresponsible employees, the owner may be trying to do the right thing. The person holding the license may be trying to do the right thing, and they've got irresponsible employees. Quick Trip, because they have liquor sales at all their establishments. Quick Trip is very responsible about making sure that they don't sell to minors. You get an irresponsible clerk, though, that is selling to minors. With the current employee card system that we have in place, we can suspend or revoke that employee's card and keep them from continuing to perform that activity, and it would also keep them from jumping from one establishment and moving to another one where they continue the same activity.
So I'll follow up on that. How many cards do you remember being revoked? Individual liquor cards? Not permits for the business, but the individual.
Not many. I mean, currently not many.
And have we revoked any recently?
Not that I'm aware of.
Not that I'm aware. I can't think of any off the top of my head.
Okay.
But the problems that we've dealt with, once again, in recent years, have revolved around irresponsible ownership more than irresponsible employees.
Yeah.
And
And
Mr.
I
Mayor.
guess my next question related to from my understanding, the majority of the cardholders are Quick Trip employees. Is that, do you know that to be, is that true or have an idea on that?
No, I don't have an idea on the percentage of cardholders
Okay.
being Quick Trip employees.
Okay. I'll have more follow-up on that. Who has what?
Something else.
Oh, did he wave again? Okay. Councilmember Snyder will go here.
I would be in favor of getting rid of these individual cards and putting the burden on the business owner, which is, I think, ultimately where the buck stops anyway. I know the individuals can make poor choices, but it's the business owner that's responsible for managing the people. So I would get out of the way of the hiring process and really make the business owner responsible. I like the idea of, if we were going to go that route, to have some sort of evidence that they've taken that free online class, which wouldn't cost the businesses anything.
I would agree with that as well. Councilmember Saber.
I understand the businesses don't want regulations of any kind, really, except maybe for the next business down the street. They would like that regulated, but not their own. And the fact that there's some difficulty in hiring at the moment seems to speak to the fact of having the continued requirement they have a card, because it gives there's a certain incentive for businesses to hire somebody who might be marginal because there's no one else around. Gives the city some protection if that person is then required to actually have a card and do at least a preliminary background check. And I would be strongly in favor of retaining it.
Councilmember Todd.
Yes, a couple of points here. One, just, I guess, I'm in favor of removing it for a couple of reasons. One is I do believe it's a barrier not only for employers, but also people seeking employment. And if we kind of look at this again through a lens of just trying to be more equitable, then I think we need to remove that as a barrier for employees, for people seeking employment as well. And the second piece of that is that there is a huge difference in looking good and doing good. And I remember being in college and having to get a liquor license for a job. It was a check mark. I went somewhere, paid a fee, and got my liquor license, and had no idea what I was doing, had zero training whatsoever. But they checked that box, and that employer did the thing that they had to do. And I think right now that is the situation that happens for anyone who requires a liquor license. It's just another checkbox, another part in that system that really doesn't do any good. Because ultimately, as Councilmember Schneider mentioned, the buck does stop with the employer. I also would be in favor of, if we do take this away, requiring businesses that have anyone serving liquor or alcohol having annual training, actually, for maybe all of their staff on, especially if it's free, on just safe serving and things like that. I would be in huge favor of that, because that actually would be doing good as opposed to just checking a box.
Perfect. Thank you. Over here. Councilmember Fitzgerald. We'll just roll right down the road here.
I'm not sure exactly if I should address this to you or Chief Freeman, but something I was curious about is related to the revocation of a card. How does, say someone selling alcohol is caught selling it to a minor illegally, how does the standard of proof for revoking the card differ from like a criminal charge type of thing?
It is an administrative function. We would notify the card holder that their card is being either suspended or revoked. They do have due process, as any other part of the liquor code allows for. There would be a hearing in front of the Director of Liquor Control where they would present their case and a decision would be made. Beyond that, they have the right of appeal to circuit court.
I guess I'm trying to tell, is the card duplicative of legal laws already in place, or I'm trying to understand where the line would be drawn there on the benefit of a card versus just the following laws already in place.
Yeah, so
Does that question
just to
make
jump
sense?
on, I think the question that you're asking is, if we did away with this and someone served alcohol to a minor, there would still be legal consequences.
There
Is
would
that correct?
there would potentially be a criminal charge.
Yes.
For a general ordinance summonization, they would appear before the municipal court.
Thank you.
You phrased that better than I did. Thank you.
Councilmember Clark.
Is that something that's covered in the training that's online? Just kind of like the consequences portion?
I'm not sure if that is included or not.
Or if like businesses have to give kind of a list of who is going to be serving alcohol at their facility? Do we have any sort of, is that something that happens? It's kind of like here are the-
Currently, in the application process currently for a new liquor, for either a new liquor license or a renewal of a current license, they do not have to supply a list of employees. So we would not know who is working for them. That's one of the reasons that the cards, when they apply for a card, that's part of the application that says where they intend to be working, what establishment they intend to be working at. If you chose to transition away from employee cards, and I'm thinking as I'm talking here a little bit, that we would probably, if we were going to modify ordinances to incorporate a mandated online training course, then the only way that we're knowing that's going to be done is when the applicant applies for a renewal of that license, they're going to have to supply a list of their employees with some type of documentation that shows they have indeed taken the online training.
Does the online training require like put your specific name in, put yours, just like watching a YouTube video?
I believe so.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Further councilmember comments? Councilmember Saper.
That button pushed. If I heard you correctly, there would only be after the fact knowledge of whether a business owner has even complied when they seek renewal.
I'll speak to that, because you're right. I mean, that's correct. And in the service industry, it is very transient.
Yeah.
And you might have 50 employees that roll through your doors throughout the year, but you're only declaring the ones that you have at the time of your renewal. So I would be against that modification, just because it has no teeth.
Yeah, it seems to be pointless that way.
Councilmember Everett.
See if I can remember how, because I remember doing some of these in the past. I think maybe this is correct. A lot of the employers, this is a way of running background checks or a criminal check, a basic criminal check on prospective employees. And I think a lot of the employers would supply the money or the fee to have the liquor license issued. So I think in one perspective, it's the businesses were actually using this as a way to check potential employees too. Is that?
Yeah, that makes
I believe
sense.
that's accurate. And beyond that, a number of employers will reimburse the employees for the cost of obtaining the $25 liquor license, or the liquor card, excuse me.
And it just seems to shift the burden to the city, though, to do that when that should really be an employer responsibility to begin with. And we don't require a card of any other license. I mean, some of our worst problems are at some of our local lodging establishments, and we don't require front desk clerks to get a license either, even though it probably
They're not
should.
serving alcohol, sir.
They're not serving alcohol, but there's a lot more crime going on over there than there's
So
in a lot
noted.
of our other establishments. Councilmember Snyder.
As far as the requirement coming after the fact and the industry having a lot of shifting about where you work, you don't track where a person is using their card after their initial application for the card, right?
No.
So that's not any different, is it? I mean, because I could get the card, say I'm working in one establishment, and 2 months later I'm working somewhere else, and 3 months later I'm working somewhere else. You're not tracking that, correct?
We do not track, if they move from one employment position to another, we do not track that.
So I don't see how doing the class and only reporting who is working for you at the time that you get your license any worse than the current system that we have, because we don't have a tracking system in place currently. So I don't see how that would be any better or worse than what we currently have.
Councilmember Saper.
Yes, yeah, but once they get the card, they have indeed gone through this training program. No?
Not currently.
Not currently. That's a hole in that then. Thank you.
Councilmember Clark, then Councilmember Todd.
I was going to say, I think there is like a print off. Whoops, did I cut you off? Okay. There is a print off for taking the test, so you can always just carry that around with you as your card. I would assume you can go to each establishment and it'll have the date on there of when you took that test and if it's been a year or two. I don't know if it's recommended to do it every year.
Or just ask the employees if all their employees are always
Exactly.
up to date.
Yep.
You could
Just
spot
show
check
me that you have
anytime.
something
Yeah.
that you've taken this test
Yeah.
in the last 6 months or
You
year,
certify
whatever the
that- yeah, you certify
employer
that you make
decides.
your employers
Yeah.
do this. Okay, Councilmember Todd.
Well, I was just going to say, with the card renewal, that's every 2 years currently, correct? However, there's no notification to the employee that that card is expired, I'm guessing, especially if they're moving from establishment to establishment.
It's their responsibility.
Correct. So right now, there are no real checks and balances for that. Everything is post. With the training, I think it's as simple, and again, it's an employer responsibility, really, but it would behoove the employer to also include that training as part of their onboarding. Anytime you get hired in an establishment, you have some sort of onboarding process. I think that would be an easy place to put that so that every new employee who could potentially be serving alcohol has that. But that's not something that the city can regulate or should regulate, in my humble opinion, I guess. But that's an easy place to make sure that it's actually happening. Whereas the liquor license right now does not require that at all, and there are no checks and balances long-term. When it expires, we may not know that. The employee may still be serving liquor, and unless there is an issue, we won't know that there's an issue until it has happened. It's all very reactive. I think making the suggestion that it becomes part of onboarding, and perhaps just like the 2-year requirement for the liquor license, perhaps they have a refresher training for all staff every 2 years to kind of catch anyone who maybe didn't have that already. I think that would be a good recommendation for employers to take on, but again, I think that's ultimately the employer responsibility. And we have just laws in place that if these things were to occur, there are consequences, legal consequences for the employer and for the employee if and when there is someone serving alcohol to a minor, if and when there is someone who, is overserved and an accident takes place, there could be litigation. I mean, there are already built-in natural and legal consequences. And so I just don't know that having, again, this checkbox item that really doesn't have any checks and balances to it is sufficient and doing what we hoped that it would do.
I would offer that if the consensus of council is you want to move away from the individual employee cards, that you give Chief Freeman, Mr. Barzee, myself some time to maybe think through how we could take that section away, but also add a mandate for mandatory online training for all staff that's involved in serving any type of alcoholic beverage. I kind of was trying to shoot from the hip, and that never works well. So I think if we had some time to work through it, we could probably come up with some
We got 21
alternative
days till our
language.
next meeting. No, I'm kidding.
Yes, sir.
Councilmember Smith.
I would certainly be for you guys taking some time to come up with a solution in the background there. I'm not a fan of just like carte blanche removing safeguards and then seeing what happens. Like if there's something we could do on the business side or any of that, you're the experts here. You've seen what can happen. So yeah, I think that would be a good way to go. This is obviously a discussion item for tonight. Nothing's changing right away. As far as risk mitigation with these cards, what do you see as the risks that these address? They keep people with warrants from ignoring their warrants. They keep felons, I assume, felons from serving, and then there was a talk about over-serving, but it doesn't seem to really accomplish that because there's not somebody in there checking. What does it do for that, for the ongoing, or is it just the point in time?
I would say the checking does occur, and to Councilmember Todd's point is like the check box is what does occur in larger organizations. In an organization like ours is we do tavern checks. We do random checks of taverns and to make sure that they're not minors in there running around, that there aren't overly intoxicated people that have been overserved. And then if they are, then we can identify who had been doing that activity through the liquor card.
Through the liquor card.
And then hold that person responsible, but also hold the business owner responsible because they're the ones that are employing that person. So it's a dual responsibility in this game. So I would say, like, the staffing element and being able to do those checks, we have that ability and we do that on occasion.
So you do the random I didn't know about that, the random tavern checks. In the absence of the cards, you could just hold the business, you could pull their license, correct? Like if there's an over-serving event, license is gone until that is dealt with, until that employee is either, I don't know, fired or retrained or something. Could that not be a thing? There's more
I'm sorry, go ahead.
More due process than you can't just snap it off.
Over-service is not necessarily regulated by ordinance.
Okay.
That falls back to the civil responsibilities and the liability responsibilities of the license holder on over-service. Now, if over-service has triggered some other type of event, a fight, some other disturbance, then that is a contributing factor that would be looked at. But over-service in and of itself is not necessarily in the ordinances.
One other question I had, and Mayor, this will be if we can do it or not. I'd kind of get a business owner perspective on the actual process of this. So Adam's here. I don't know if we can have him answer a question.
I got at least one feedback about process, and it's generally the same you hear about most process here at City Hall here is.
I understand that it's
city's put in
fairly
place-
simple.
I think the process the city has put in place to acquire is one of the best of the various municipalities in the area.
I'm more thinking
But
if somebody
it's-
comes in to a business and wants to job there, right? They want to come in and put in an application.
Yeah.
Do you first have to send them to the police department to fill this out before then having them
Before
apply?
you actually hire them.
So, because if you do that, if you send them out the door, they might not come back. Like, they might just be like, well, that's ridiculous. I'm going to go somewhere else where I don't have to do that.
All persons employed in the retail. So I guess the second they become employed, according to ordinance, they should have it.
Yeah.
It says all persons employed.
I'm just looking at it from a hiring perspective in a time where it is very hard to hire.
So I guess you'd have an offer for employment, and get the card, and then you become employed. If you want to comply with the ordinance.
Yeah. Process, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd be interested in hearing what we can come up with as an alternative before we make any sort of move. I'd like to have something behind it. I'd be interested in that.
We're going to ask slightly different. I'm going to ask for a draft ordinance at the next meeting on the removal portion, and we can certainly work off that draft and continue that to a future meeting, but at least we'll have the bulk of the work done already, and we can add stuff to that as well.
Would that?
I think, okay, did I already call, did I call on you already? Did I totally skip over you? Councilmember Stokes, what do we got here? We've covered it? Okay. I did skip, okay. She said get an ordinance out. There we go. Councilmember Todd, yeah, I saw you wave it earlier.
Yeah, I just have one question
I
for
saw Keith as
clarification.
well.
I guess in the absence of these cards, would the periodic tavern checks stop?
No.
Or that, okay, so again, the card, the actual liquor license card is not gonna, the absence of that is not gonna prevent the regular checks. And if you find that something is happening, you still would be able to, I guess, investigate and find out who that person is.
Yeah, yes,
Okay.
that's correct. Basically, you're just, elimination of the card is elimination of personal responsibility by the employee. So that's what you really have on the table here. Or you want to hold the employee responsible, or do you want to hold the business responsible? And what I'm hearing is you want to hold the business responsible, not the employee. And that's fine. My question that I had is, I've heard two different things here. Abolishment of the cards is the issue, or is the fee the issue? And if it's the fee that's the issue, but keeping the card and still issuing the card and still holding a person responsible through the card, I mean, if I walked in and I identified you as the person serving a minor, I'm still going to identify you because you committed a crime.
Right. And so
So-
that's where that's my question, is even in the absence of a card, me as a personal employee would still be held responsible legally if I am serving a minor. Is
In that
correct?
situation, correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess not to belabor the point, but my point is that in the absence of the card, I do still believe that individual employees and the employer are still held responsible for their actions. And so that's kind of where I just don't think that the card itself is serving an additional benefit to the employer or the employee. And just to second, again, the barrier to the employee, and maybe this is just a personal perspective, but I don't think that someone who's been convicted of a felony should never be able to serve liquor. And so that's just my, I guess, second point to that, again, as a barrier, not just for the employer, but also as an employee seeking employment. Thank you, though.
All right, there we go. I think we have exhausted a lot on this one. I'll stick with if we could get the ordinance drafted and have it on the next agenda, and then we can continue to talk about things and modify things and amend things from there as well. Councilmember Smith.
So is it an ordinance, you're asking for an ordinance to remove the cards. Are we also looking for something to strengthen the other portion of liquor control that would kind of come in behind removing the cards?
Yeah, I mean,
So that would be a two-parter.
it could come into the next meeting as well. Yeah. Councilmember Stokes, there we go.
I'm not opposed to the training, but as you know, I'm a very proud owner of a license right now. But I did take the training, and it is good, but I don't know if it's necessary for it to be a mandate. I think that should be on a business owner, because ultimately, if we are putting it on the business owner to be responsible, then it is the business owner's job to find that training or complete that training. For me, it was maybe if you knew nothing, it would be really great, but it seemed mostly like common sense items. Just a thought.
Perfect. All right. I think we're done. We're done. Yes.
I think just clarifying the direction for the ordinance, right? If it's
Yeah, I would have a drafted ordinance removing that section.
just removing the section
0101
requiring.
Yeah, we can
cards.
add other stuff as well, and it'd probably end up in a different section of the ordinance anyways.
All right.
So you're going to end up with probably multiple changes beyond that anyways. And then we'll vote on it and see where everything lands from there. Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to ask this next item, number 9, Community Center Operating Agreement with YMCA. Is there anyone from the YMCA here this evening? Or is it just you're just presenting?
Just me.
Then can I skip you real quick? And John, are you ready? You ready to go to the next item here? I made John wait long enough there. I didn't intend to make for him to wait over an hour there after pushing him away from the podium once. And so then I will go ahead and skip over for John here so we can go home. 16th and Clay Parking Lot Termination of Reciprocal Easement Agreement is the item we're on. I will start with John and let you.
Okay,
please.
Mayor, Council, I'm John Miller, representing Store Safe Warehouses, who owns half of the parking lot at 16th and Clay, as well as the city with the other half. So 4 months ago, we were having a whole bunch of issues in regards to the apartment parking in that city lot overnight, which was creating parking lot issues for our tenants in that building at 1700 Swift. In the parking lot agreement that was drafted up, it required a 120-day cancellation notice to cancel that agreement to share the lot. When we were having the problems, we issued the cancellation notice, and I hate to say it, my mistake, that termination date passed. It was not our intention to allow that date to pass, but it was to give us 4 months, and when I say us, all of us in this room, 4 months to try to rectify the problem with the apartment parking issue that was created in the lot. Everything's been taken care of. I want everything to go as it always has been going. Chief Freeman and the police department have done a dynamite job on ticketing, notifying people. I would like for the city to continue to take care of the parking lot, open it up for all the businesses. There are some advantages if it is terminated to help us, but that's not my goal. Our goal is to help businesses in the area prosper as well as us. The parking lot is very well needed for all the drinking, eating establishments in the area and all the daytime traffic for the local businesses. So if you have any questions towards me, I'd be glad to answer them, but that's basically what we need. And I'm asking that we terminate the termination agreement.
Well, I mean, Tom would have to answer this, but I mean, the agreement's terminated now, right? The
It
terminating.
is.
So you can't undo the terminate. I mean, the time period has occurred. The contract
It
been
has.
terminated.
I'd want to
And oh,
check.
sorry to get you up there. No, I'm kidding.
I'd want to check one thing, but at a minimum, what we could do is simply do a new reciprocal easements agreement and have that here, executed by the Millers.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it
et
requires.
cetera.
You
But,
just re-up
yeah,
this
there is some question because this document, in fact, has been and is recorded, and as a result, the more than 120 days, as John knows, have transpired, excuse me, Mr. Miller knows.
No, it's John.
Has transpired, and therefore, by operation of law, it automatically then terminated, okay? And so, pretty much, we don't have an agreement right now. There is one thing, for example, one thing that specifically continues under the reciprocal easements agreement is Store Safe 4's right to access 18th Avenue, which is across, therefore, the parking lot, the part of the parking lot the city owns, as long as the city owns the parking lot. I mean, it would terminate like if we no longer owned it, that right. But right now, he still has that right, which is, the same as every other entity, business, person that drives their vehicle across it right now. There are some operational issues, I would add, and some potential loss of parking spaces if this thing actually is separated.
Correct. It was drawn very tight on the line there, and it's very dimensional with what was drawn. I would just note, to me, I think this does expose one problem, and that I think the 120-day period is too short. Because in a short, year and a half, we've had this contract. I've been told you were going to terminate. You terminated via email, and then you did actually terminate a third time. Well, officially once, but it either threatened or attempted, and then, it finally became a final the third time. And to me, if the city invested quite a bit in this as well, and it just doesn't make a lot of sense as a city to allow 120 days and be able to terminate this in this short order. Because we paid, 1.5, 1.6 in the total parking lot. And I think as, we get into a project like that, we would want to protect ourselves as well, and we would want longer-term stability. I mean, overall, I want to continue the agreement, continue doing what we're doing. I think it's very beneficial for the area over there. But I think it would be good if there were longer terms to that contract. And then I'll open that up to council here. Councilmember Smith.
To me, Mr. Miller, his
No,
actions,
John.
John's actions are logical. He had some pretty heavy parking concerns with his tenant. He exercised a legal mechanism to get that attention that was needed, and it's been resolved. What we had is a technicality where a termination wasn't terminated, and an effort to re-enter that agreement. I think we should copy, paste, change the dates, re-sign it. I mean, it seems to me, we had a good thing going. We keep the good thing going, especially now that the issues have been resolved.
Oh, Councilmember.
I would be in
Councilmember Snyder.
favor of extending the time period, just because there were a lot of man-hours involved in having the termination. I mean, it was real. It really is terminated. So if we could agree upon a longer period of time where if we sign up again and maybe if we both agree that, no, we've tried everything we can try, we're going to terminate this, otherwise let's give it 3 years, 5 years, whatever it may be. What would be a reasonable time frame for you, do you think?
You see, the issue was, it just happened so fast, and 120 days could
No,
happen
no,
fast.
120 days is not fast.
Well-
In the eyes of us as a landlord dealing with the problems that we're dealing with.
But you wish that it hadn't happened, which tells us we
Well-
probably need a better process, right?
No, because your process isn't the problem. Mine is. And what I'm saying is when things are good, you forget about the things that are going on. When things are bad, I'm dealing with all the problems the problem was resolved. I forgot, because I'm dealing with all my other problems. So everything that we asked the city to do, you guys did it. And I messed up. It was an oversight on my part. And if there was an easier way to do it and just cut, paste, stamp, sign, in my mind, that's what should have been done. We should have continued working together as we always have been and move forward. So it's not a problem or a process mess up with the city. It's all me.
I'd add to that, I do think longer terms and then mutual termination as well would be beneficial. Councilmember Fitzgerald.
I would also be in favor of either a longer term or setting certain conditions that could be, come up that could cause a termination option. I'm not a fan of this unilaterally terminate with 4 months' notice. I do appreciate you, Mr. Miller, coming back and wanting to re-up with this, but I'm just concerned when another issue comes up down the road, is this going to be the same thing where we have 4 months and Mr. Barzis in current time looking at documents and the council has meetings to try to address? I think I'd rather have more long-term stability there, especially given the funds the city invested in this.
Sure. Let me just, one thing in regards to that term that I want you to think about. Excuse me, my mouth is dry. As this community's changing, we all don't want to be locked into something. If you want me to sign a year agreement or a 2-year agreement to keep this parking lot together, and another group comes in and says, gosh, I wish we could take that city lot that you own and create a parking structure or create apartments, then you're going to have to come back to me and say, hey, remember that 3-year term that you signed on the parking lot? We need you to back away from it. So when we sat down and discussed this whole thing, we thought 4 months was a good time period for both parties. Because I have a very sneaking suspicion in the very near future, that parking lot that you own will not be a parking lot. So I'm okay looking at long-term, but is that really what you all want to do too?
I think it would be to the benefit of council as stewards of our community, our dollars, that if we do spend that amount of money, we have some sort of guarantee that we have access to it for a certain period of time.
Right.
It is a very rare thing to put that much money into it and say, you know what, well, 120 days after we agree, it could all be over. When I say short, I mean it's relatively short for the lifespan of what we did. How
Yeah.
long is that payment good for? 10 plus years.
But
And
we also,
we're only guaranteed 120
when we
days.
entered that agreement, we all had an agreement how that parking lot was going to work.
Correct.
And it wasn't working that way. So that's why the thing was canceled, and that's why it was set up that way.
Yeah.
So back to your comment, it was my fault. I messed up, but that 120-day period, in my mind, benefits both parties. And all I'm asking is, let's just go back to the way it was. I have no intention of taking the parking lot, but because the expectations of the city and the Millers or Store Safe weren't lived up to, that's when we executed the termination. I had some conversations prior to that, because you're bringing up that there were 3 times that I said something. There were some comments made, there was some emails made. Tom's the one that came back and said, if you're going to do this, you got to do it legally. But that was all in the process as we're trying to solve the problem.
Yeah.
We solved it. So in the future, I see no reason, unless there's some major redevelopment, which potentially could happen in the near future, there's no reason for us to do anything with this parking lot agreement except continue it just the way it is and take care of all the businesses that are around there.
Certainly, I think the goal is to continue here. Councilmember Smith.
So John didn't hammer on this point, but he did allude to, as it sits where it's separately owned, John now owns half of the parking lot directly adjacent to his building, which is a large benefit to him and his business personally. The fact that he's coming back to us and saying, let's get back into this agreement that is actually less advantageous to him tells me he's here to be an advocate for the city and for the businesses around. If we're going to try to overlay a longer time frame on it, we're just pushing against leverage we don't have. And it's frustrating to me to sit and hear that, because John's doing what's best for the city right now. not what's best for him personally. The parking lot's already built. He's not asking us to build a parking lot. It's already there. And now he legally owns half of it. And he's willing to re-enter a contract that would allow the public and the customers of the businesses around to use that lot. The only reason we got here is because people were parking in the spaces designated for his tenants with impunity. And now that's not happening. Like, it's happening less.
There were people parking in the public lot.
Yeah.
That were creating the problem. Not just mine.
Not just yours. They were.
City too.
Correct. And that's being handled.
Chief Freeman took care of that problem.
So I think we go back into the agreement while that's on the table and go back to what we had.
Councilmember Saber.
The city did spend a lot of money in that parking lot, which has benefited StoreSafe.
I will say no, because we didn't gain anything. We gained 5 parking spots out of what we already had, and we turned over some of the most prime real estate off of 18th Avenue. So we gave the city the western half of our parking lot. So when you look at the numbers and the geographical layout of that parking lot, it actually hurt us. Because Garney and McClure are all in the north end of that building, and we had the whole north end of that parking lot all the way over to 18th Street, the exit around the Oxbow. We gave all that up because of the city willing to put in a parking lot that benefited the community. The Millers didn't benefit from it.
But
that
speaks to the other point of why we need to have a longer term, I believe. It might be fine as long as the city is working with you. But as we know, businesses change. It's possible that some tremendous offer came and you took it. And some other owner came in. And that would put it all up in the air again with just 120 days. And I would really be in favor of a longer term. I'm not sure what that term should be, but certainly longer than 120 days.
No, and as I said, there's definitely some mutually, you should have to mutually agree on some sort of termination as well. Yeah, okay, what do we got? Councilmember Alvarez.
I just want to say, I agree with Councilman Smith's comments. Can't think this is an isolated case. Maybe in the future, changing the time, but as long as there's no legal ramifications or repercussions, I guess, from accepting the new contract or new information from Mr. Miller, I think there's no legal problems with it. I think we should accept that. And then maybe in the future, have a longer time frame for something like that.
No, I would just say, I just think it creates an opportunity for the city to consider better protecting the work that was done over there. Further comments? Tom.
I want to make sure, I think we're not using some correct terminology here.
Oh,
So I want
probably very true.
I want to correct something. The term of the reciprocal easement agreement prior to his termination, the term of it is perpetual. It does not terminate except either party giving 120 days written notice to another party. I mean, if you want to extend it to 180 days or something and make it 6 months instead of 4 months, I'm sure the Millers would be fine with that. But extending it, it's not in the city's best interest either to have this get to be too long of a period of time. I have heard zero discussion of any other redevelopment going in any of this area, okay?
And we practically
I attend
restricted
those
by the way we
meetings.
drew the lines.
But
we split
with
the
that
property in
said-
half and put a height
but with-
restriction on it.
But with that said,
practically
and that's the
undevelopable.
reason, by the way, the language is the way it is in the agreement, right? The agreement that we had, and that is that StoreSafe 4 gets this perpetual right to have access, even if this gets terminated, down to 18th. As long as the city owns the property. Because we anticipated the possibility that at some stage in the future, some third party, the city may want to sell it to a third party, 10 years ago, there was no anticipation of getting rid of the city parking lot where it was, and now we have a 9-story, very nice, well-occupied apartment there.
Let's get that one for
So,
Instagram.
with Mr. Smith's hand up, I know what that means. Tom, it's time to shut up, and I want to take over.
So actually, I'm going to ask, refer to the easement agreement. I guess more what I was addressing would probably be what was referred to as the parking agreement. Correct? We have an easement agreement and a parking agreement that's separate.
No, remember, yes, it is, but remember one important thing about the parking, it's called the Parking Development Agreement.
Which allows us to operate that as a community.
Exactly. Now, the Parking Development Agreement, actually, I let John know, the first time he gave the notice to it, he gave it to me under that, and I, as a gentleman and a professional, I said, John, you're terminating, if you really want to do this, the wrong document, because there's nothing in it
Every day you
about
learn something.
But with that said, there's not much left of any substance in the Parking Development Agreement. If you go through and read that document, there isn't much left at all. About the only thing that's substantive in there that still is in effect, we gave as part of the deal. What you folks need to remember at the time, we were trying to make a business deal, and this was going back and forth on what they wanted, what the city wanted, and et cetera. This was not just the Millers dictated to us, this is what the terms are, not at all. What we tried to do, and one of the things, that I was saying, that under the Parking Development Agreement that still applies, there's a section in there, he wanted the right to be able to claim a certain number of parking spots that he could use as he further developed the building. He didn't know what it would be going into the future, and we could change the city code. All he asked for is, those terms in your present code, I want to keep those so that I have a minimum number that this would allow to count additional things for his development. Made sense. That's still in effect, but Mr. Mayor, what you need to understand, the real meat and bones of this agreement for parking over here is all in the reciprocal easements agreement, because it accounts for, the lighting, it accounts for underground infrastructure. The meat and the bones of this are in the reciprocal easements agreement, and that's the one.
I wouldn't disagree. I was just noting that is a component as well.
Pardon, I'm sorry.
That's still a component as well, though. As you said, it's not completely
The Parking
exhausted
Development
here.
Agreement?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's still there. It
Yeah.
hasn't been.
Well, there we go.
But
There's
not much,
the
there's
shorter.
not much left to it after this got approved.
Okay, Councilmember Smith.
So the reciprocal easement agreement as written, if we were to re-enter into that, what happens in the event of a sale on either side? If the Millers get a $100 million offer for their holdings there, and they say yes.
They'll take it.
Exactly, but could the new owner come in with 120 days and snap it off? Does that right transfer to the new ownership with the sale of the building?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
It runs with the land, correct.
It runs with the land. That could be a concern. Now, I don't know if we can remove that, because that then opens us up pretty hard. And same for us, if we sold it, could they snap the agreement off with 120 days notice? That I didn't realize was the case. I thought it had to be the Millers deciding, or it had to be the city deciding. Those two parties have been in agreement pretty much the whole time. Introduce a third party and chaos could ensue. That I would like to take a look at, but otherwise, I think we re-ink the agreement.
And I better just clear. I don't have any other problem with the agreement. I think we're doing good. My interest is really just in protecting what I feel like we've put into this as well. So I don't want you to take that as,
No. I have no problem with that, and I understand that. And I think when you talk about future development and what's potentially could be happening down here,
I see this as well.
I mean, if we could turn the mics off and hide everybody's cell phone, I'll tell you some ideas that I've got going on. But the
But they're off. No, I'm
okay,
just kidding.
here we go.
I'm just kidding.
No, but this area, that parking lot is ripe
Yeah.
for some things to happen. And I just don't want you guys to try to lock something in long-term where then the Millers all of a sudden become the bad guy because we won't release you for some parking issues that we need. What Tom's explaining is we've got the 147 spots that we control on our property. There's another 80 spots on the city that we've been granted that we say that is in the agreement that we have access to so that we can expand and add more offices in that building and get away from the industrial stuff. So it benefits me too to lock that in for 2 or 3 years to make sure that we still have those 80 spots.
And I would still want some apparatus where if we came together, now if one party doesn't want to, but if we both say, okay, we see some mutual benefit to something.
Yeah, and
I don't know how you'd, I'm not a lawyer, but this is where
I'm not a lawyer either. I'm a common sense guy, and sometimes I think kind of weird, but it's almost like if we knew something was really going to change there and there could be another third party coming in, it's almost like we sit down as a group before it all happens and goes, okay, what do you guys want?
Yeah.
What do we do? Yeah. What do we do to protect us?
Yeah. And I mean, I think very weird myself, so I know. Okay, what else? That was a thumb. She's like, I'm done with this. Thumbs up.
Yeah. At least it wasn't as hard as the water rates.
I thought we were going to get through that a little bit faster. I would have moved you up a little bit there.
No
do we have further commentary on that, on this in general? Are you fine with considering, I guess it'd be increasing the 120 days, but doing something that accomplishes us guaranteeing this partnership for a little longer period than what it currently does? It's a kind of a broad direction that if you could work with John on.
We can talk about it.
Yes, I don't want to, no, yeah.
No, but I think you all ought to talk about it.
Yeah.
To make sure that you really understand the consequences that you could be doing if we lock something in long-term. That's the only thing I want you to think about, because when this parking lot was developed and Oxbow went in, there was already some discussions kind of behind the scenes a little bit. Hey, okay, the city could sell off that lot. And yeah, making those comments 3 years ago, 4 years ago when the Oxbow was breaking ground, it's kind of a joke. Yeah, that's right. Nothing will ever happen to that parking lot. But with what we've got coming down in the next year and the changes that we could be seeing over the next 5 years, parking issues, parking codes are changing. There opens up some opportunities for the city to do something with that property, whether it's with the Millers still involved or somebody else still involved. Now, I will tell you, we have no intentions in selling. Still got the boss back there, and he's coming on board. So let's just set something up that we're protected with both parties. And if you want something long-term, you talk to Tom about it, and then Tom and I can sit, or excuse me, Mr. Barzee and I can sit and hash it out and figure out what works.
And I believe his face said, I can't wait till I'm up at that podium.
Yeah.
It's a no. All right. Tom, can we get to drafting?
We'll certainly work on it.
Can I make one recommendation? I'm open to making changes, okay? I'll say that. Can we get this reciprocating easement agreement, whatever, back in place so that if we have issues, the police department can help handle the issues? Right. That's the problem that we're dealing with right now, is because the police cannot do anything on this property because it's privately owned.
Yeah, on the Miller side of the property, they can't do anything right now because it's covered like any other private parking lot. Okay.
I told you to turn the mics off.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, at this point, our next meeting's not until 21 days from today, I believe. Right? We have an off week this time.
Will it take further council action to enter in?
I think I know what you want, and let me give it a little bit of thought, because we'll have 3 weeks before the next council meeting. I'll try to send out some of my thoughts and ideas on this so that we can communicate that way. okay? And you can either like it or not like it, and let me know, and we'll
send you back a score.
We understand the intent is to move forward. I think right now that the parking lot from a otherwise an operational standpoint where people park and stuff like that will simply continue like it is. I mean, people driving on the Miller's property, he's not going to say anything. Another thing, I just looked down at one of my notes, we did lose, legally now, we no longer have access legally to Swift Street anymore. That's one of the things that went away, at least from the parking lot. We don't have access, direct
Drove by there
access.
the other day.
So I'll try to get, I understand this is important. I'll try to get things going quickly. And then, John, you simply need to let me know, because since I'm a lawyer, I can't deal with you unless, I go through your lawyer, unless you and your lawyer tell me differently that I need to talk directly to you.
You talk directly to me.
Well, and get Kelly to send me an email.
I'll do it. I'll do it.
I am not a lawyer, so I can talk.
So we'll decide on this in 3 weeks?
Okay.
Okay.
That'll be the final decision, and everything else should happen in that.
So let me ask you something. Can I get staff and council support that we continue moving as we have been? And the reason I'm asking this is if we have problems, I need to make sure that the police department can continue doing what they have been doing so that we don't have a 3-week drop-off and have some major parking issues again.
Is there still a lot of cars still parking?
No. But
Okay.
like today, the parking lot was just jam-packed, but it was all the businesses around there.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about the daytime. What I'm worried about
That's
is
at night.
the enforcement at
3
night.
to 6,
Because
whatever, yeah.
Garney starts coming in at 5:30, 6:30 in the morning, and all the residents' cars were all up front, right where they parked. And that's what I'm trying to protect a little bit.
Okay.
And in moving forward with this termination, it's not something I wanted to do. I have to protect my tenants. So I'm reacting to tenant complaints and moving forward 4 months ago, 120 days ago with the termination agreement.
I saw you grab the mic earlier. Did you have something to add, or was that just you're preparing for the next item to talk to the YMCA?
No, I can just assure Mr. Miller that we'll continue to do what we have been doing. Now, we may not be making pay tickets on what is now considered private property, but we will continue to enforce the no overnight parking as best as we can until this is resolved.
Yes, people will know we are continuing to be in the area, and hopefully that should.
Yeah, and for your sake, if you want to buy a tow truck, it's your property for the next 3 weeks.
I will not be parking on that half for 3 weeks.
Turn it into another pay lot in Northtown.
Oh, God, please.
Are you going to stand out there all day and ticket people and tow people?
No, he will.
Recruited. All right, fantastic. I think we are good. Yep, and everyone's good with moving
Okay.
forward. Perfect, thank you.
you
Appreciate
all.
you coming out, thank you. Now we'll move in reverse to number 9. Community Center Operating Agreement with YMCA, and I believe this one is just Mike.
It is. It's just me. I will say, just so the council knows, I met with YMCA on Friday, their president and their new COO. They were aware of tonight, but said they would look to come in November as far as questions and whatnot. So circling back on the why, we touched on it last meeting. I wanted to provide you with more information than the last meeting, just to give you time, again, to think about it, any questions that might come up. I met with Councilmember Fitzgerald, say this afternoon, this evening, to go over a couple things. So again, that's the big thing from this is getting that across. Any thoughts, questions that you have, feel free to contact me. But I wanted to provide some more information. A little history. The city went out for proposal, and I think it was 2012. Received 2 proposals, one from the hospital and one from the Y. At that time, they rejected both. Over the next 2 years, there were some pretty large deficits that they were projecting with the community center. So they reconnected with the Y and worked out the current agreement in place. So, you know, as I mentioned in there, their management fee, there's a base management fee that the Y is guaranteed that we pay monthly, but then there's also kind of an incentivized management fee that's based on a deficit. The lower the deficit, the bigger percent of fee they get. Even if they have a surplus, it still kicks them into that 17% fee. And at the time, you know, this was a well-needed solution for the city because we were losing a lot of money, and this was a way to get somebody in here to operate and reduce. Couple of the big things. You know, we do maintenance on capital projects over 5,000. Those can add up. I have talked to them. We're going to have 2 of our staff going through the Y here in the next week or 2 to do, for lack of a better term, an audit. Kind of, have they been maintaining? Get our own eyes on some of it. So we'll have that also to provide to you. Answers regarding that for the next meeting. I did throw back in here the expenses over the years. One of the questions I've received, the YMCA other costs, part of that is deficit reduction bonuses that the Y received mainly in the beginning, the first 5 years, but then there's also administrative fees that come out of the fund into administration and finance and whatnot to offset our time in it. Also, based on the WISE report currently right now, you know, we do the NKC Healthy Citizen, 142 members. Right now our cost is $2,600 a month. I just want to give you a perspective on resident members, what we have at the Y. You know, the ultimate thing from these discussions, not necessarily tonight, but is to find out what council would like to do going forward. You know, whether it's just straight up renew with the Y, negotiate a little bit. I believe we can negotiate as long as we don't change the scope too much. But then there's also the option of soliciting proposals, having, you know, whether it's the Y or whoever, submit new proposals for operating and or purchase, whatever the council desires. But the big thing right now is questions from you all, or anything you want me to dig into that I haven't put in here yet.
That's off, and it's on, and it's on. There we go. Councilmember Smith.
The maintenance and capital improvements piece, I know you said we're gonna have an audit of the facility, see what's going on. I would really like to see that $5,000 figure revisited in light of what everything costs now. $5,000, like 7 floorboards, if something were to go wrong. So I'd like to see that number go up pretty significantly. And it also, to have regular checks, because it would incentivize them to just delay stuff until it costs $5,000 and then have us come in and pay for it. Not that I assume that they're going to do that stuff, but the incentive is there. So to have some sort of regular check on it. The other piece, I don't recall, but I believe we're not running a regular deficit anymore. Is that correct? We're at worst break even. Like, we get the monthly reports and.
Yeah, last year was a deficit.
Yeah, we were during COVID. It was a little bit of a deficit.
As of, I think there's been 3 years. Sorry, I think there's been 3 years where there's been a surplus.
Okay.
Right, 3 of the, eight.
They were dug out of a deep hole, started operating well, and then we started making them wear masks while they were swimming, and that went down.
Yeah.
So they're headed back toward profitability. What I'm driving at is this incentive to reduce the deficit seems like it's a relic of when it was losing $1 million a year and could be likely pulled out, so that we're not restructure how we pay out revenue, but not tied to a deficit reduction.
Right, because even with the surplus, and this year, this is a report given to me last Friday, As of right now, they're running at a surplus. But even with that, then the fee, part of their fee for next year will be 17% times their total revenue.
Plus 50% of any profit, right? Or is that extra?
No, if there's, well, right, if there's a surplus, we get half of it.
Right, but we're also paying
But we
them-
still do the
yeah,
17%.
We still do the 17%. So the deficit reduction piece, I think, could phase out, and then we could just split the revenue because now it's net positive. Also on the, like, Schedule E, the way they calculate, it looks like they're calculating the net loss after we pay the fee, which is, did you see it that way? Okay. I'm not an accountant, but it looks like they take operating revenue minus expense plus us paying them, and then they're like, we only lost this much. Well, yeah, because we paid you a big chunk of money. So I would like to see if we're going that route in some way to use revenue as a base for the percentage, to not also include what we've paid them as part of their, calculation.
There was, so through the time going through this and all that, we reached out to other cities in the state, listserv, just to see, are there other examples? Lebanon, Missouri. So they started with a community center, did an agreement with the YMCA in 2010, and for about 4 years, almost 5, almost identical to ours. In fact, I wonder if ours isn't a play off of theirs that maybe the Y started out with. So 4 years into their agreement, they actually switched their agreement to where the Y takes care of all repairs, maintenance, utilities, everything, and pays a square foot, per square foot amount.
And the city still owns the building?
Correct.
So it's a rental to the YMCA, and they
Correct.
operate it.
And it started at a very low rate per square foot. Now, granted, that was 9 years ago.
Yeah. I'd like to see that as
but there is a model for that.
Yeah, that was one of my other questions. Are there other agreements in state, out of state? YMCA operates nationwide, so I'd be curious what other situations like this exist now that the facility's dug out of the hole.
This is probably in the packet. What's the timeline on this again?
So the biggest timeline is if the desire is to do something different than what's in place right now, December 31st, have to give notification.
That's, okay, notification.
Just notification, yeah.
Okay, fantastic. What other questions we got here? Councilmember Snyder.
I think the idea of even if we brought the rent down very, very low, but we made them responsible for the facility and the utilities, just made it super low at first to make sure they weren't back in a hole, and then we could see where to go from there. I think ultimately, long-term, that would be very beneficial for us. And like you pointed out before with the $5,000, they would be, there's an incentive there then to maintain the facility and not let it fall apart to a costly disadvantage to the city.
And that, following up on both your comment, when I met with them, I also met with a vice president and their maintenance person, a month ago, and brought up the fact of maintenance logs, things like that, where they can show us that they have been checking on it, whether it's a daily thing in the pool or weekly in the, wherever it is. We have pushed back on some recent lighting in the pool, the uplighting. It hadn't been changed or anything for quite some time. It got to where it was over half the lights out. They presented it as a request over $5,000, pushed back that no, that was maintenance. I mean, that should have been. To which they acquiesced and they're taken care of. There's another one coming up with the HVAC system, and we've already discussed that's something that should have been maintained.
So they don't currently maintain any sort of log at all, or any sort of?
Correct.
Just kind of whatever they can find in their email for the last month. And
Right, maybe some emails that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it feels like a method. Okay. Councilmember Fitzgerald.
I'm not sure I'm going to add much over what's already been said, but I would be in favor of looking at renegotiating this contract or, a lease option like Lebanon's using something like this. My understanding is when this was set up in 2014, 2015, the operating the community center was costing the city about $1.1 million a year. I think the Y seems like doing a decent job. It's been decreased. I think on average the last 3 years we're paying about $420,000 to the Y each year to run it, but that's still a fairly significant cost. And then also with some of the revenue splits, the Y, if it makes money, the Y gets half of that, but in a loss position, the city covers 100% of the loss, which I think is even different than our Link City contract, which is split, profit and loss. I guess the point I'm getting to is this contract doesn't feel like it's particularly advantageous at this point, given the shift over the last decade. I think this is one of the Y's bigger facilities in the metro too, so maybe an opportunity to get a better deal for us this time around.
Thank you. Councilmember Smith.
When it came to the floor in the gym that we spent a lot of money to replace, it came out that something about the water fountain had not been checked and it was on an exterior wall. These are the sort of things that before inking a new contract, I'd like to see our Public Works or whoever codes inspection go around and identify, because having a water fountain on an exterior wall is just waiting for it to freeze, especially around here. The other thing I would add to any audit that happens for repairs and maintenance is checking the doors to the pool area. The wall of windows and doors leaks air like crazy. And we're coming into cold season. If you're on that half of the pool deck, it's 25 degrees colder. So, yeah. So check those out. Check the door seals. That's all for me.
There you go. What else we got for now? There we go. Continue to plug along there.
All right.
We'll do it again.
Just to clarify, I heard about, kind of looking at modeling Lebanon's, so does council wish me to, start talking about the Y? Just because it's an option, and to clarify also, drop the idea of purchase, RFP or anything at this point? And I mean, that is an option. Obviously there's renew, there's RFP for another operating agreement to see who else does, and then there's also RFPs for purchase. But I want to throw it all out there to make sure.
I guess on the RFP side, or not RFP side, on the renewal side, if there's substantial changes to the contract, is there then a point where you have to go back out to an RFP to find out if someone else can do, like what? I guess that's probably a hard question to answer. What is too far on that? But because you're talking about taking like a whole different style, as he noted, almost renting it versus right now all they're doing is managing it. Is that enough of a change where you'd have to go back out to an RFP process?
Let me talk, to be perfectly candid, this is one, Mike's been doing this. I haven't even had a conversation with him about it. Let Mike and I have a conversation, and I'll answer your question directly after I've done so.
Perfect. You see where I'm going with that, though.
Right.
Yes, okay, perfect. Okay.
I understand exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
And
But I think there seems to be a favoritism towards renewal. I guess the question came up is whether or not anyone wants to sell the building. Is there any appetite to sell the building? All right, we'll end that one very fast. We'll say no on that
exactly.
one.
That's what I
There you
wanted,
go.
was just to mark it off.
That was one of the shorter conversations of the night.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item is the consent agenda, which I'm going to stop on. Councilmember Smith.
Yeah, I would like to have a discussion about item 18.
Item number 18 will be removed and discussed after approval. Consent agenda, is there any other items wish to be removed?
I will move to approve the amended consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor, please say yes.
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 Opposed, say no. Motion carries. That takes us to item number 18, which is a resolution amending resolution number. I did read that right. Resolution amending resolution number 21046, which granted certain code modifications for construction at 1340 Burlington. Call sign brewery, resolution number 23080. And
Yeah, so Mr. Schluter mentioned during his comments, and I did look at the plans, talks about having a kitchen in the building separate from where people and patrons would be able to sit, with a window that serves into the spot where the patrons would be, but without a dedicated sprinkler system. if I'm understanding it correctly, I'm just curious, why no sprinklers there, and what are the safeguards that we have in place in case there's an issue in the kitchen?
So this is, let me explain what this one is overall. So Mayor did read this correct. It is a resolution to amend our existing resolution. Our existing resolution before this one is a code modification request for what the building code generally requires due to some alternative compliance. So what this one does is, because the applicant is proposing a separate tenant space. So let me describe what this separate tenant space generally is. So per our code, typically you have a requirement for automatic fire sprinkler system for anything above 5,000 square feet or over 100 occupancy load per tenant finish. So because this is a separate tenant space, so we're looking at it separately from the rest of the building. And as you mentioned, this separate tenant space, it has less than 5,000 square feet. In fact, it's about 1,200 square feet. And it is not going to be used as assembly area, generally meaning not for dining, eating, drinking over there. They do have a service window. However, the service window is not directly open to the rest of the building. It is opening towards the west side of the building. So the reason we have to amend the code, amend the existing resolution is because the existing resolution particularly called out no cooking facility could be allowed in this building. However, because of the separate tenant finish, we could allow a cooking space in this particular area. And the reason for that is because they have fire-rated walls, and the code compliance manager has reviewed it along with the applicant, which actually hired FP&C to look at into these particular alternatives to comply with code. So this particular tenant finish actually comply with code. So this is why we're amending our current resolution that modified the code request at that time.
Thank you. The separate tenant space, you mentioned fire-rated walls. Will it have the envelope around it that will, whatever the burn window is, I don't remember how long it's supposed to take for fire to spread outside of a separate space. Is it going to have that?
That is probably more of a Hargis's question, but yes, they generally do.
It should have that. It meets the code, and that we look at this the way we've looked at this is like a strip mall, where it's a separate building.
Yeah.
It's a separate tenant use, so that's how we've looked at it in this spot, and it does meet the required fire codes for that occupancy that's going to be that tenant space.
Okay, so fire catches in that, it's not going to spread into the brewery area where I'm having dinner with my family?
No.
Okay, and did you say it opens to the west side of the building? Because that would be toward,
The service window?
yeah.
Yes.
Huh.
Because, yeah, the
Okay.
service window
I'm
is
just trying to
toward
picture
the
that. I guess I
west.
can pull up
We're
the-
typically looked at it, the dock end alleyway, over
Okay.
that way.
Thank you.
Further, Councilmember Clark.
I mean, I do remember this coming around the first time, and I mean, I was definitely going to lean on Chief Hargis, because when it came around the first time, we made concessions to allow this to be a brewery in the first place because there were no sprinklers, so it was kind of like, how do we feel about that? And we let it go, right? We made this huge thing to say, okay, you can run this brewery without sprinklers, and I guess we just Hail Mary it and have a plan.
Well, we really didn't let it go.
Yeah, okay.
We made them tailor that occupancy to meet life safety codes for what they have.
Okay.
Let me correct the service window thing. I'm sorry, it was to the east. I don't know what I was thinking.
Okay.
It doesn't make sense.
Facing
either way.
Burlington.
Yeah, I was not walking around back to get my Tupelo Joes.
No,
Sorry.
it was toward the east.
But additionally, I did speak with Justin Burton, who is, I think they're on-site engineer. Like, he's part of that project, and he does work in fire code and prevention. I imagine he's had many conversations with you, and he felt very adamant about, like, Amy, this, I feel no, questions about the space being designed the way it is and the safety factors. And I know it's a part of his job is to make sure that it's something that's going to be contained. But again, I'm definitely leaning more. I mean, that's his feedback. That's what he does for a career. I don't think he would last long in his career if he made bad recommendations. And I've worked with him in the past, so trust him pretty well, but I would still lean toward your, recommendation and kind of approval of that to make that decision.
Councilmember Fitzgerald.
Just a question, would there be any process that this business could go through to get this approved that wouldn't involve the city council changing this, code or ordinance, exactly what we're doing?
So if the applicant were to completely install the automatic fire sprinkler system, then that will eliminate this option, that going to council, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that helps. I guess I'm just trying to understand. I know little about fire codes and sprinklers and that type of thing. My only hesitation here, if there's something that's been in place saying that that wasn't necessary to be safe, I don't, have a ton of, I do appreciate everybody saying that guidance there. I'm just a little hesitant on changing that.
Well, the original one didn't allow the call sign to put the kitchen space in their area. This is a completely separate tenant space, if that makes sense. Think of it as a strip mall where if you have your business here and you put a kitchen in there, we wouldn't allow that. But if the adjacent space, you want to go in and put a kitchen in there, meet the code requirements there, that's what this is allowing.
So almost like putting a separate business next door, and it would be
correct.
allowed under that rule? Okay.
Councilmember Snyder. Then we'll go back.
At the time that we did this, it was a big deal. Like, we talked about it a lot. You gave me the number for the fire marshal. I called the fire marshal. The whole reason why it happened in the beginning was because it was going to cost $500,000 back then to take the water main across Burlington. And that's why they couldn't tap in and get sprinklers, because I'm sure people that weren't here at that time were like, why don't we just tap in and do sprinklers? That's why they didn't put the sprinklers in, because it was going to cost $500,000 to go across Burlington, because it has to be a certain, I don't know what it is, but a certain diameter water, and that was on the other side of Burlington. So that's why they did that. But the big thing at the time was, they increased egress. They had more egress from the building. They had firewalls, a special door in between like the tasting room and whatever. And don't worry, because there's no kitchen. So the adding of the kitchen is, I guess my question for you is, do we have other commercial kitchens without sprinklers anywhere else in the city?
Yes. If they're in an occupancy under the 5,000 square feet.
Okay.
Councilmember Clark. There we go.
Yeah, I guess that's my thought, is that maybe kind of weigh this toward potential approvals. The reason why this becomes a resolution to the resolution to become then the new ordinance, right, is because it's owned by call sign. Is that why? Is that the primary reason, is because they're essentially extending, but it's a part of their business, but it's just an enclosed, they could just call it call sign 2 and apply for a whole different thing that has nothing to do with this resolution and could be passed on its own, right?
No, it is not because of the ownership of it.
No.
If it is called Call Me, it will still be the same issue. The reason for that is because the resolution, how it was described, covers the entire area.
Okay.
So because that covers the entire area, now we have to amend what the resolution was passed to allow this separate tenant space to have a cooking facility. And that is the only component we're amending from what was approved before. Did I describe it in a way? You can get it?
If they don't use this tenant space, because this is their tenant space, right? But they mapped it out to be a separate kitchen space
So-
themselves?
This is a separate tenant finish. Doesn't matter if they're leasing it, or if they own it, or if it's owned by a different party. It is a separate tenant finish. That's how we look at it. Like what Chef Hargis mentioned earlier, this is like a strip mall. You could own this component, you could not own this component, but from building code perspective, this is a separate fire area. This is a separate tenant. That's how we look at it this way.
Right, and based on those terms, you're saying if it was a separate tenant, it would essentially pass because of the size and?
Right.
Okay.
Here we go. Councilmember Todd. Did you still? Okay, done. Councilmember Smith.
So I'm good with going ahead and passing this. We'll do that in a second, but I do want to address, and we've talked about this before, why are we the approval body for code modifications? And that's the core of Mr. Schluter's question. And what Councilmember Fitzgerald mentioned is, like, most of us don't know why the code is the way it is for life, safety, or whatever. We can have questions to the fire department. But we approve balconies on the Oxbow. What the heck? Why were we the ones approving that change? And I know it's embedded in the city ordinances, I know, but can we change that? Because I feel nobody on this dais should be the ones approving the code changes. We need a body of experts for that then recommend to us.
We
If
can do it
say,
we can do it next meeting.
Let's do that, please.
So if I can chime in real quick on this one,
Yeah.
our code does say city council is the governing body to grant, you have the authority to do so.
Right.
However, operating-wise, you also have the authority to appoint a panel
Yeah.
that they can approve these particular requests. We don't have a lot of these requests, but once, usually at staff level, we can resolve it. But once when they get to the council debating time, this is probably a good sign where you could appoint out a panel. You can say, staff, we would wish to move forward with a panel of X amount of people with this background and this specialty, and then we can grant them the authority to move forward.
Would we have to do that on a per project basis, or could we just have a standing committee?
We don't have a written code to let us to do the standing committee yet, so it will be on a case-by-case scenario. However, I don't know, since I've only been with the city for 2 years, I don't remember if we have done that before, but this is what my building code official has suggested and had mentioned, and why our current ordinance, our codes say you have the authority, and what in reality you could possibly do.
Yeah, okay.
And again, these are very rare cases. We don't have a lot of code modification requests, and I hope we don't have a lot in the future.
It's like the third one that I've presided over, and I feel wholly unqualified for it. So I would like to, at the next meeting, if possible.
We can discuss it, I'd say.
Discussing
Yeah.
some way to form a standing committee that would be the experts on code
Because
matters.
this would be partially driven by the, I don't know the acronym, whatever building codes we approve every year. And we always modify and put ourselves in city council as the appealing board, I guess.
Yeah. Yep.
There we go. Here he is.
You understand one important thing, Mr. Smith?
Yep.
It clearly provides in the code a right to appeal. So even then, that ultimate appeal is going to end up with you folks.
That's fine.
Yeah,
Just
'cause
send it to
that's what
that
the
body
appeal board
first.
is, though.
Yes.
Well, but this isn't an appeal.
But I wanted,
Yeah. Centralize
Yeah.
the process.
If they rejected, because even if we had an appeal board, this wouldn't go to the appeal board first unless we said no. And then they would appeal.
well, it depends on how you structure it. I think what Mr. Smith is saying, if I understood correctly, is that these wouldn't come to you initially. They're going to go
Yeah.
to some professionally more well-experienced people that have some knowledge and understanding about it, and then they would make a decision, and if they granted it, I doubt if anyone would appeal, and if they didn't grant it, they would have a right to appeal, and I can suggest to you that the only logical place where that would come is going to be to this city council. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I would like to see it go first to a body of experts, then to us, similar to what we do with the planning commission. Granted, not a body of experts, because I'm also on that one.
There is,
but-
I think, specific, George can head nod me on this one, it'd be specific requirements that the code book lays out as well. Is there not for the sort of experts that you'd want on a committee?
Within your adopted building code, it states very clearly for a board of appeal.
Yeah.
As far as I can see looking at it, you did not amend that out. All you did was to say the city council will be the appeals board.
Right.
Got
So
it,
we are
yeah.
I would like to see it go somewhere before us and make a recommendation to us. If we decide in our infinite wisdom to not agree with those experts, that's our prerogative, would be a bad call. But I want to see that level of review.
And
Next meeting keeps getting
Councilman
longer.
Smith, we review this stuff before it comes to you.
Yep.
And the fire department, there's a lot more cases where codes and fire, we make those people and meet the existing codes as written.
Yep.
And it's just certain circumstances, and then we only bring them to you if they have brought in a case where they meet that code.
and they don't conform in some way
way.
that's just outside. Yeah.
Correct.
But we are then making a change to something that was set up specifically for safety.
Correct.
One more time, and he said it'd be short.
Yeah, and kind of piggybacking on that, just so you know, when these items come to me before they come to you folks, you can ask any of the department directors. I push back an awful lot on a whole bunch of things. I don't have enough information. I did that on this specific thing here. And Shu's already referred to that this evening. Not only was reviewed by fire, codes enforcement, but this had a separate report from FP&C consultants that in fact are trained to evaluate stuff like this, and they came to the conclusion, and it's in the papers you have, that it met all, in fact, codes and requirements. So this isn't something that automatically just gets to you no matter what. We do look at these things in a lot of different ways.
Fantastic, thank you. Is there, not a motion yet. We got Councilmember Saper, what do you got?
In piggybacking on that, I think it's important that we not overload our processes with another group. Because we have people who have reviewed these. We do have experts who have done that.
I think that would be a great discussion for next meeting when we discuss this.
Yeah, I think that would be I will follow up with that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Move to approve resolution number 23080.
Second.
All in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Taking us to item number 21, approval of the 2024 renewal of employee health insurance bill number 7806, ordinance number 9603. And we have, presenting this evening, Casey.
Easiest one of the night, I promise you that much. Good
No.
evening, Mayor and Council. This is our 24 renewal of our employee health insurance through Blue Cross Blue Shield. And pleased to announce that it came in flat this year, thanks to some negotiating with Lockton. Much better than our last year's rate at 11.8. So I am suggesting we approve our insurance for 2024.
Well, thank
If you have any
and
questions,
thank you for joining us
Lockton's
this
here.
evening.
Yep.
I got a bunch of questions and one for legal counsel. No, I'm kidding.
First reading.
Second.
All in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries.
An ordinance adopting and approving confirmation of coverage renewal and addendum to group contract maximum refund account, together with the benefit and rate confirmation for the city's A, Preferred Care Blue PPO plan, B, Personal Blue PPO plan, C, Blue Saver PPO plan, D, Blue Select Plus Personal Blue HRA plan, and E, Blue Select Plus PPO. And further, adopting and approving the COBRA rate confirmation and the elective pregnancy termination indemnity agreement, all effective January 1, 2024, with Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Kansas City regarding medical insurance benefits for the employees of the city of North Kansas City, Missouri.
Yes.
I want a third reading.
I move that bill number 7806 be placed on second and final reading and pass as ordinance number 9603.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Fitzgerald.
Yes.
Councilmember Alvarez.
Yes.
Councilmember Clark. Councilmember Stokes.
Yes.
Councilmember Todd.
Yes.
Councilmember Saper.
Yes.
Councilmember Schneider.
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
An ordinance adopting and approving confirmation of coverage renewal and addendum to group contract maximum refund account, together with the benefit and rate confirmation for the city's A, Preferred Care Blue PPO plan, B, Personal Blue PPO plan, C, Blue Saver PPO plan, D, Blue Select Personal Blue HRA plan, and E, Blue Select Plus PPO, and further adopting and approving the COBRA rate confirmation and the elective pregnancy termination indemnity agreement, all effective January 1, 2024, with Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Kansas City regarding medical insurance benefits for the employees of the city of North Kansas City, Missouri.
Item number 22, approving accounts due and payable by the city through October 13, 2023, bill number 7807, ordinance number 9604.
First reading.
Second.
All in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries.
An ordinance authorizing payment for certain accounts due and payable by the city through October 13th, 2023.
I move that bill number 7807 be placed on second and final reading and pass as ordinance number 9604.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Fitzgerald.
Yes.
Councilmember Alvarez.
Yes.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Councilmember Stokes.
Yes.
Councilmember Todd.
Yes.
Councilmember Saper.
Yes.
Councilmember Schneider.
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
An ordinance authorizing payment for certain accounts due and payable by the city through October 13th, 2023.
Number 23, staff reports. Comments?
All right, report's been submitted. I do want to point out upcoming items of note. It says in there November 7th for the next city council meeting. It is November 8th. Apologize for that, but just make sure everybody knows it'll be Wednesday, the 8th, for that one. Otherwise, Anthony and I think Kim have some comments.
All right, here we go. Fire away.
Just two things that are kind of informative. Buchanan Street Buchanan Street from 23rd to 25th Avenue, starting this Friday at 6 a.m. will be closed until Friday, the 27th of October. This is the area behind Spices and the DMV. All businesses will have access to their properties, and all driveways will still be open, just through access on that street will be closed. And then also, you'll notice our tree contractors out in Burlington, and then over the next couple days, starting here this week, but then next few days, trimming trees on Burlington.
Do we maintain all those trees? Those are ours, or those aren't MoDOT? Okay.
Those are our trees, yes.
They're beautiful. Kim, you have next round here?
I do. Just want to give a brief update that the YMCA floor reconstruction is going to begin next week.
Boom. Oh, Victoria here coming in from the crowd. I wondered why she moved up there. Now we got it. What do we got?
So I just wanted to let you know that this Saturday, we are doing the Plogathon again. So that's the Swedish term for jogging while you pick up trash. So if anybody needs a little exercise, sunshine, and want us to get some trash saved out of our water system, please come join us. We'll be at this gazebo on the corner of Clark Ferguson Drive and Powell at 9 a.m.
And I
Saturday.
joined last year, and I assure you there was no jogging. So.
We also get, if we win, we get a sweet trophy.
Yes.
Complete with a disposable
Yes.
cup.
I've seen it.
Yes. Hopefully it's got some new trash from this year's.
And so Clay County was the winner last year. We have 2 more cities that joined us this year. So if you can't come on Saturday, you could still go to KC Plogtober and sign up to join another Clay County group too. So, thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. Here we go. Council comments. Councilmember Fitzgerald.
No comments.
Councilmember Alvarez.
No comments.
Councilmember Clark.
All good here.
Councilmember Stokes.
No comments.
Councilmember Todd.
I guess I'm supposed to say no comments, but real quick. Just thanks for the public commenters. I always have to thank our public commenters. Thanks, George, for coming. Obviously, that helped us a little bit. And Chief Freeman, I promise I'll agree with you on something at some point. That's it.
Councilmember Saper.
I do have a comment. The the library board staff has created a row of decorated pumpkins. They've created them, various ingenious, colorful, and sometimes whimsical display that are at the checkout desk at the public library. And you can vote for the one you like best. And apparently, there's no limit on about how many times you can vote. So go and vote early and vote often for the pumpkin of your choice.
He really teed that one up, but thank you. Councilmember Snyder.
The strategic plan updates, I was just going to follow up on a couple of those. I know in Ward 4, River Forest area, the erosion, it said that we were going to do some sort of a public meeting to tell them what their options are. Is that planned? Has that already happened?
We don't have a date yet.
Okay, and then the other thing I was going to ask about is Citizens Academy, not a question. I know that you didn't have enough people, so it's not happening this fall. But I feel like this would also be a great place for celebrations, like how many people total have been through, that we could just keep updating as we go, because it's such a wonderful program. And I feel like it should also be celebrated and encourage people to sign up in the spring.
Thank you, Councilmember Smith.
All right, happy fall, everybody. It is beautiful outside, and I want to thank Victoria and the Parks Department for the new mulch at the Howell Street Playground. My kids are loving that. Thank you.
And I'll do nothing. Now, item number 26, consideration and request to hold and recess into an executive session is requested by the mayor to be held on this date on a potential litigation matter pursuant to Missouri's Revised Statute 610-0211. Call the roll. Or, how
Apparently,
about
I
a
did
motion
not
first?
read fast enough on the health insurance for you. So,
So moved.
There's a motion. Is there a
Councilmember, I need a roll
Second.
call.
Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Fitzgerald.
Yes.
Councilmember Alvarez.
Yes.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Councilmember Stokes.
Yep.
Councilmember Todd.
Yes.
Councilmember Saper.
Yes.
Councilmember Schneider.
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Item number 27, consideration of a request to hold and recess in executive session is requested by the city administrator to be held on this date on a real estate matter pursuant to Missouri Revised Statute 610-0212.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Fitzgerald.
Yes.
Councilmember Alvarez.
Yes.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Councilmember Stokes.
Yes.
Councilmember Todd.
Yes.
Councilmember Saper.
Yes.
Councilmember Schneider.
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Sure.
And with that, we're going to executive session. No further public business. Our votes will be taken this evening. Thank you.